amazing instrument. It has developed into an incredible voice in today's music. So many types of guitars, so many styles of playing, all sorts of gear. How does one make their voice be heard as a guitarist? My name is Jeff Floro, and welcome to All About Guitar, where we talk tone, we talk technique, we talk gear. Where we discover how we can become better musicians in a world of constantly changing technologies. Where we take a good look at everything guitar, and sometimes not exactly guitar, but just as important, so we can be more successful as a musician in today's music scene. So sit back and relax, and let's explore all about guitar. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to All About Guitar. My mic's a little strange here. Hang on a second. I think it's this way. Hold on. There we go. Now I'm on. Right. Welcome. The mic is twisted around. Welcome tonight. We have a great show for you. First of all, I just want to wish Beethoven a happy birthday. It's his birthday today. And even though he's from the past, he was a true rock and roll rebellious guy, so I admire him. So anyway, happy birthday, Ludwig and Beethoven. But anyway, we have a really exciting show. I'm very, very honored to have Michael DeTemple on the show. And he's a little bit part of history. He's played on several interesting things. I'm just going to point out a couple of things. I'll let him talk a little bit about his background, but we want to get into these guitars that he makes, the DeTemple Guitars. I found out that you played on the soundtrack to Bonnie and Clyde.
I did. I played 5-string banjo.
That is so cool.
I was a teenager.
I remember watching that movie.
I still get a residual check every year. Thank you, Warner Brothers.
Very, very cool. But also, too, he was he played, I think, all of the guitar parts on Dave Mason's Alone Together, which was one of his pivotal...
No, I played guitar on the album.
Oh, okay.
Dave Mason, he's a great guitarist, and he played most of the guitar on his own album.
Okay.
But I played banjo and guitar, acoustic guitar, and banjo on his Alone Together album.
Oh, okay. Now his career as a session guy and sideman is amazing. He's played with such notables as Eric Clapton, Van Morrison, Bob Dylan, Neil Young, Pete Townshend. The list goes on and on. Ron Wood, Randy California from Spirit, Booker T, Albert Hammond, Paul Butterfield, Earl Slick, and Rick Danko from the band. So that's a pretty good roster of people you've hung out with. So, but let's talk a little bit about your background. Now, understand, tonight we're going to talk about the guitars, and I'm going to have him come back and we're going to talk about his career because that's a whole other show. But I wanted to focus on the guitars today. So what I wanted you to do is go back a little bit in your background as a session player and stuff, and how it led up to you looking for what you wanted in a guitar, because obviously you were building them to make something that you weren't getting what you wanted from the stock guitar, and then what led up to DeTemple Guitars.
I started repairing guitars when I was 13 for Ernie Ball.
Okay.
He had a music store on Ventura Boulevard. He was the first all-guitar music store, and he was the first Fender dealer. And, I started hanging out there when I was about 10. I'd ride my bike there, and I just wanted to play the guitar. And so Ernie was always real nice to me, put up with me, I'm sure, But one day I was in the shop, and either it was a Music Master or a Duosonic came in, and he rented them out to students because he gave lessons, or he had teachers that gave lessons at his shop. And so one came in, and it looked like it had been dragged behind a car. It was beat, and he said, "Oh man, I'm gonna have to refinish this and put new frets in this and fix it all up before I can rent it out again." And I just said, "Oh, I can do that, Ernie." He goes, "You can?" And I said, "Oh yeah." So he gave me the guitar. I took it home and I figured it all out, and I had been fooling around with guitars for probably 2 or 3 years by that time, But I refinished it. I put new frets in it. The first time I ordered frets, I ordered them from a place called Vitali Imports, and I got a ball of fret wire, and it was bar fret wire, which doesn't have a crown on the top, and it was like a ball of yarn,
Yeah.
And you had to straighten it out and tap it on an anvil and straighten the whole thing out. And I found out, well, that's not the kind of fret wire I need for this. I went back to Ernie. I said, Ernie, I wasn't able to find the right fret wire. He goes, oh, I'll get it for you. And so he got me fret wire, and then I fretted the instrument, and everything was good. And so I probably worked on about 10 of his rental guitars. I never, asked him for money or anything. I just, I was at Ernie's, and he didn't make guitar strings at that point, And so after I fixed about 10 of those guitars, he goes, go back there, Mike, and pick a guitar from under the shelf. And he had a shelf in the back of the shop where there was all these guitar stands standing up with the necks up, and I went back there, and he said, pick any guitar, you can have it for all the work you did for me. And so I picked a 1956 Martin D21.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I got that guitar, and it was a great old instrument, and I did a bunch more guitars from him, and I got a 1929 or 1930 National Style 4 square neck, but it was like it had never been played.
Wow.
The case looked shiny, It was beautiful. It was a beautiful guitar. I got that from Ernie. And then one day he said, I'm going to start making guitar strings. He was a steel player. I'm going to start making guitar strings. You can buy them any gauge you want. And so I went, well, that's a good idea, Ernie, And he said, I'm going to sell them mail order. And back then, when you bought a set of strings from Ernie, you got 2 E strings and 2 B strings.
That's right. I remember that.
And I've been trying to talk Ernie Ball into doing that as like a special anniversary year or something like that, where they, put 2 E's and 2 B's in the packet. But that's the way they came out to begin with. And he had a store that was a long, narrow store, and next door there was a mirror image on the other side of the common wall of the same store. And after he told me he was going to start making guitar strings, I think next time or time after that I came in the shop, there's a hole in the wall, and he had put a door through to the other store. The flower shop that was in there was now gone, and it was boxes full of guitar strings. And that was the beginning of Ernie Ball Slinkies and all that, And he sold them as mail order, and he did well. He was, like I said, he was a pedal steel player, and so he played with a thumb pick and finger picks. And I made these finger picks, for myself. I'm a banjo player too, and so I made these finger picks for myself. And the big round end on the National pick, I cut out the 2 round sides, and I just had a little sharp point, and then it was all polished and just like glass. And I gave a set to Ernie, and he really liked them, And so next time I went in, he goes, hey, I lost my picks. Would you make me another set? I bet I made him 100 sets of picks over the years. Never did it dawn on me. He was selling my picks. Now, fast forward 40 years later, and I'm making the guitars, and I've always used Ernie strings, and I've been loyal to Ernie Ball ever since. But I called up the company, and I said, I'd like to be a dealer for your strings so I can put them on my guitars and all. And so they set me up, and they sent me a catalog. And in the catalog, there's a product that he sells called Picky Picks. And those are my picks that I made for him. And he's been selling them for 60 years, I bet. I'm not kidding. It just goes back, or 55 years probably. But, he snuck one over on me, I figure he owes me a couple dollars at least,
Or at least some more strings.
Yeah, or some guitars.
Yeah, he makes good guitars.
They make very nice guitars up there, I lost my supplier for Swamp Ash. Used to be a great lumber yard right over by the railroad tracks by Whitsett, I believe it was. And you could just see this stack of ash that if you looked, you could see, oh, that's the same size as a train car, and they just took it off the train car and stacked it over here in the same configuration. And I would go in there and I could pick one board or two boards. I just build one or two guitars at a time, and I could get great, super featherweight swamp ash. It was no big deal, stacks of it. There was always like 2 railroad cars full, And then one day I went in, where's all the swamp ash? Where's all the ash? And the guy goes, oh, this company bought all of it from us, and they don't even stop the train here anymore. It just goes straight through. I said, oh, up north? And he goes, yeah. I said, oh, is Ernie Ball buying it? And he goes, I can't tell you. And I said, well, is it going to San Luis Obispo? He goes, yeah. So I lost. That was where I got all my early swamp ash. It was fantastic, to just, go around the corner from where I live, and there's what I wanted right there,
Now, let me ask you, though, is it a problem? I mean, yes, you have a problem with the swamp ash, but with any of the other woods, is the whole shortage of woods?
All woods are a problem to get, It's very, very difficult. And for me, I build out of wood that I bought 10, 15 years ago. I have wood stashed all over my property, and it's, it's dated, and I pull stuff out after it's been sitting around for a while. It needs to reach an equilibrium moisture content before you really build out of it. It becomes more stable that way. Mm-hmm. So, keeping wood supplied nowadays is very difficult. I've gone to building a lot of instruments out of roasted wood because it really stabilizes the lumber. It's fantastic sounding. This guitar is roasted swamp ash, the body, mm-hmm. and the neck is roasted maple.
Hold it up so they can see it on the camera. This is so beautiful.
Yeah, it's really quite nice. And it has a Coca-Cola fingerboard. It's very dark now.
Now, how do you like Coca-Cola as a
I am crazy about it. I've built only with Brazilian rosewood if I'm building, rosewood fingerboards since I was a kid. But I've built some guitars with Coca-Cola, and I love it. It's really fantastic. It feels
Is it better
great.
than Brazilian in your opinion?
It's every bit as good to me.
Oh, okay.
Every bit, yeah.
Have you ever used ebony?
I have, yeah.
What do you think of ebony?
Ebony is nice for guitars that you use ebony on. I'm pretty traditional, and an ebony fingerboard on a maple neck on a light body. To me, I've built one guitar out of the 800 and something guitars that are DeTemple guitars that had a African blackwood fingerboard. Now, you'd look at it and you'd say that's ebony. It's actually a rosewood.
Oh, okay.
But it looks like, and the ebony is just, it puts a certain harshness to me to a Fender style guitar mm-hmm. that's out of place, So it's just like an ebony fingerboard. I hear a real difference on an ebony fingerboard on a Les Paul as opposed to a rosewood board on a Les Paul.
Now, how did the design of the DeTemple come? Now, because you have a pretty amazing. I don't know if you still have all the guitars, but you've had some pretty amazing guitars.
Oh yeah, I've probably owned 5,000 guitars.
Wow.
They've come to me since I was a kid. It's just amazing. When I was 11 years old, somebody in church had a Martin guitar, and I was starting to play pretty good by the time I was 11, and they had a 1936 00018.
Wow.
And the father of the family, was a property master in the studios. And they'd go, take that guitar and tie it on that saddle, or, mm-hmm. Pretend you're hitting the guy over the head with that guitar, something. It didn't have a lick of finish on it. It was completely trashed, but it didn't have one crack in the instrument. And, somehow he ended up with the guitar and brought it home. And the family lent me the guitar for about 4 or 5 years, and that was the main guitar that I played all the time. And by the time I had to give it back, when I was 16, just before I turned 16, I could really play. I was a very good player by that time. I took the guitar to school with me. I had no interest in school whatsoever. It was give me my guitar, that's it, you know. My teachers got it. They knew that that's what I was going to do, so they kind of encouraged me, you know. And so I had to give that guitar back. They asked for it back. I said, well, let me just buy it from you. That's my guitar now. No, we want it back. So I had to give it back, and I went and I worked all summer long, and I bought a 1964 Martin D28, and I still have it. 55 years ago I bought it.
That's a great guitar too.
Yeah. Yeah, and the next year I worked all summer long, and I bought a 0021. I still have it too, you know.
Those are nice.
Both Brazilian.
Now, when you were gigging and stuff as a session player and sideman, what was your main axes and stuff?
You know, I played banjo. I was really a very good banjo player. I played.
Did you have a Gibson?
I had a lot of banjos.
Oh, okay.
I got a lot of banjos, but you know, I played a classical concerto for 5-string banjo with the LA Philharmonic, and it's called the Winterfest Concerto for 5-string banjo. And that was written by Earl Robinson, who was an Academy Award winner, and he was a friend of the Weavers. He was blacklisted during the McCarthy era, and he was an amazing man. And one morning at about 6:30, I had won the Topanga Banjo Fiddle Contest many times, and a Sunday morning at about 6:30 in the morning, the phone rings. I lived in a little cabin up in Topanga. Hello, and he introduced himself, and he said, I wrote this concerto for 5-string banjo. I wrote it for Pete Seeger, but he can't play it. It's too hard. And he said, I asked Doug Dillard and I asked John Harford if they could do it. And they both turned me down. They said no. And I called the Topanga Banjo Fiddle Contest, the people that run the contest, and they said, oh, Mike DeTemple's the guy, you know. So they said he doesn't play like anybody else. He plays real different, you know. So he called me, and I said, well, I'd like to do that, you know. And so later that day, I drove to Santa Monica from Topanga, and I met with him, and he gave me the score. We talked for a while. The score was 26 pages, just my part, of line after line, chicken scratches. I mean, when I did it with Elmer Bernstein conducted, and Lawrence Foster conducted, and various orchestras and so forth. But I did it with the LA Phil for the Young People's Concerts, which was Leonard Bernstein put those on. And I was one of the young people. And the conductor that he brought in, Lawrence Foster, was only 24 years old. I had just turned 20 when I performed this concerto. And he looked at it when we met. It's 45 minutes long, and we had a 30-minute rehearsal with the orchestra. 30 minutes. So he picked out parts, you know, and he goes, geez, this looks like it's the hardest thing I've ever seen written for a soloist. And it took me a year and a half every day, 12, 15 hours a day to learn how to play it. You know, it was a knuckle buster. But when he gave me the score, I said, I was leaving, and I said, just tell me one thing. And he said, what? And I said, which one of these notes is a G note? Because I didn't know how to read music.
Oh,
you know?
really?
Yeah.
I thought you read. Okay.
No, I didn't know how to read music. And so he said, what? You don't know how to read music? And I said, well, if you tell me which one is the G note, it's all relative. Just whatever that is, the next one up, and so forth. And so he showed me, and I learned to read music, and I learned to play that concerto, and it was one of the great accomplishments, really, of my life.
It's interesting because after doing that, in your bio, it mentions because you could read, they started calling you for film scores.
Well, you know,
that's funny.
Elmer Bernstein called me for lots of film scores. He loved the way I played. As a matter of fact, one of those little crossroads you come to in your life, you know, I faced one, and, you know, I am where I am today, and I've got a beautiful family, and everything's wonderful, you know. But when I was 20 years old, Elmer said to me, Mike, you're a virtuoso player. You know, he said, I can get you a scholarship to Juilliard. I can get you full scholarship. You don't have to pay for a thing. I said, nah, I don't want to do that. So, you know, it's just one of those crossroads you come to. You know, it's and years and years later, you look at it and you go, well, that was a funny decision, but that was the decision,
I don't think you did it.
Yeah.
You did badly because you playing
No,
and touring and
no.
doing all sorts of.
But
cool stuff.
to get back to the question, what brought me to building these? When I was with Ernie, I was working on all these old Fender guitars, and old at the time, an old, 50s Telly would get in my hands that was, 10 or 12 years old or less,
wasn't that old back then.
But the one thing that I realized is that every one of them, although they looked the same, every one of them was different. Why is this different? And I read a book about violin making when I was probably about 13 or 14. And it talked about how the violin makers take the plates, and that's the top and the back of the instrument, and they hold them up, and they hold them a certain way at a nodal point. And when you tap on a board, and if you're holding it in a node is almost on a board, like if you have a rectangular board, a node is almost like a hinge spot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about a third of the way down the board, and if you hold it between your thumb and your middle finger, nothing else touching it, and you tap it, the top of the board flops this way, the middle of the board flops that way, and below the other nodal point, at the other end of that rectangle, it flops the same way as the top. So that board is going like this.
Right.
And that's how you get the resonation out of it and the note that rings out of it. So I read that, and of course I was taking all these guitars. Just back then, nobody thought anything about unsoldering a guitar and taking it apart. And I took them all apart, and I would tap the neck, and the neck wouldn't come out of this one, and it would fall out of this one. And pretty soon I started realizing that, some of these bodies and necks, when I got all the parts off of them, and I tapped on them, there was one of the guitars that was very resonant and really had the magic. By golly, it had a harmonic interval between the tuning of the neck and the body, and the neck was real tight in the neck pocket, wouldn't come out. And so I worked on very, very few guitars that were like that, but I worked on many guitars that weren't like that. And especially Tellys, I worked on. They were prevalent, and Ernie catered to the country field because of his pedal steel playing, and so I started putting two and two together about the neck and the body and the tuning, and I even tuned my truss rods, So
a lot of the Fenders at that time were not that. You had good ones, but you had a lot of ones that
they
were
were production guitars that nobody thought about. This neck, does this neck go with this body? Oh no, it goes in there, and you put bolts in it, and it's put together with the neck. But that's not the way I think. And I think most guys that build guitars nowadays don't think just production. If you're building, thousands of guitars, you're more interested in building thousands of guitars than, I build a guitar every month or two, something like that. I was building more, but I don't anymore. It's I'm slowing down a little bit. So.
but most people don't think about that. The neck has to harmonically resonate with
right.
the body.
Yeah. So I try to as I shape the neck, I sound it, and as I shape the body, I sound it, and I start bringing them into a harmonic interval between them. And I'm not looking for any certain interval, but I do want things to be tuned relative to A440. So, but I like to. It's real nice if you can get a third or a fourth or a minor third between the neck and the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look for that, and the truss rods. When I first started building them, I hooked up a tuner to them and started holding them at the nodal point and tapping on them, and I removed metal until I got a perfect pitch truss rod as well.
So even the truss rod resonates at a certain, that's harmonically.
If you tune to A440 and then another note is A444, it's not in tune.
Right.
So I try to keep things, if it's a D note, I believe that it's been such a long time since I developed the truss rod. I think it's a D flat that I make the truss rods to, and I removed wood or metal on the truss rods until I got to the natural note, and then it still had to be in this certain length and so forth. So when I got to the D flat, when I tuned it to D, the truss rod was too short. So it was.
Now what's the resonant note for the neck that you go for? Or does
they're all different, and
So
this neck doesn't even have a truss rod in it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I have two. I don't have the other guitar here, but two guitars. This one, and I make a telly style. I call it a 52, but I make a telly style guitar out of a 1,000-year-old Alaskan red cedar body.
Wow.
Yeah, I got lucky to get this section out of a tree. I've still got these big cants at my house. Big chunks of the trunk of the tree. And it's a beautiful, beautiful sounding wood for a Telecaster. And so when my friend from up around Seattle called me and he said he had found this wood, I said, well, cut a piece that's this size so I can make a telly out of it. I want to see what it's like if I'd like to build out of it, So he sent me down a piece and I made a telly real fast, and I went, I just cut a neck out of a piece of roasted maple. Didn't put a truss rod in it, shaped it, fretted it, ended up playing that guitar for 5.5, 6 years. It's a magical guitar, It's just phenomenal. No truss rod. That neck never moved an iota from the time I strung up, and I play heavier strings, 11 to 52, And so it never moved. This guitar, this got the 11 to 52 on it, and you sight this neck and you just see this perfect even relief the whole length of the neck, But we have to shape the fingerboard in advance, and we got to know how much it's going to flex and so forth. So there's a tremendous amount of intuition that I use in building guitars. It's nothing is set.
Yeah, so you adapt
it's wood.
To whatever
It's
wood.
Yeah. It's the boss from the get-go, and you have to build around what that wood says.
Now let me ask you, because you guys you make your own pickups too. What was deficient that made you want to make your own pickup? What was happening that you were encountering?
I fought with Strat pickups since I was a kid.
Okay.
I went, somebody doesn't know what they're doing, Sorry. I mean, Leo Fender made the greatest guitars going. I build Fender guitars. I don't, there's a lot of secrets in what I do, but they're Fender guitars. But by golly, always the neck pickup is too strong and the bridge pickup is thin and anemic, and the middle pickup is overpowered, and nothing is right. And if you just used any one pickup in a set of 3 in a Fender guitar, you could put it under the strings and raise it and lower it to a spot where it sounded really good, and it would sound great. But as soon as you introduce another pickup under those strings, and you put that pickup right where it sounds the best, and then you throw the switch, well, guess what? They're not balanced to each other anymore. And then you introduce a third pickup that's got magnetism. They all 3 have magnetism, so they're pulling on the strings. And then you set that where it sounds best, and then none of the 3 pickups are balanced to each other. And I went, well, the first thing is, you got to build pickups so that they're balanced to each other. And the string vibrating and moving like this interrupts the magnetic flux, and that's what induces the signal. Mm-hmm. That's what makes a signal happen.
Right.
And so there's hardly any movement back by the bridge, and there's a lot of movement of the string up by the neck. And guess what? What did I just say? The neck pickup is always overpowering, and the bridge pickup is always thin and anemic. So one night, 20 years ago, I would go to sleep at night and I would just stick a problem in my head with something I was trying to solve in the shop, And I went to sleep that night thinking about pickups and what can I do to, to change this. And I woke up in the middle of the night, man. It was like there was a glowing chalkboard in front of me, and it was basically this formula for the making pickups that would be balanced. And so I went out and I made the pickups, and by golly, it was like, yeah, that I'm on the right track. And I think it was not more than about 5 or 6 sets until I went, this is it, And then I've got a very small shop, and every time we set up to put frets in, we have to break down and set up for fretting. And then if we're doing this, we have to break down and set up for that. And pickups, you got to be real clean with the pickups and no dust around, and it's better at least. So I ended up talking to a number of people, and I talked to Jason Lawler, and there was a wire that Red Rhodes and I worked with Red Rhodes before Red died, and we did a lot of testing on his Velvet Hammer pickups. And we both found that this one wire that we got, that we really loved the sound of this wire. And when I was talking to Jason Lawler, I said, if you could build, not what people want, but if you could build a pickup with any wire that you'd want to use, what would you use? And he said, well, there's this stuff called, and I said, oh, you're the guy. Thank you. Because it was the wire that Red and I had decided to use. And so I asked Jason, I said, would you build my pickups? I have this just explicit formula that I want my pickups. I mean, you have to use 3 different length magnets for a set of Strat pickups. They're made completely different. The inside wind is the hot lead. The outside is the ground. Nobody makes pickups that way. It's always the ground on the inside and the hot lead on the outside. Mm-hmm. That's why they're so noisy. My pickups are very quiet, and so it's a lot of extra steps to make. So, these pickups.
Like on your telly, it's quiet, but you still get the spank of the pickup that lilt.
Oh yeah.
Now, do me a favor, since you're talking about the Strat, pull the Strat out for a quick minute and just show us the different pickups and how they blend.
All right.
And because we might as well, since you just brought that up. And while you're grabbing it, I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
And that is, on your pickups, do your pole pieces stagger or are they flat?
No, they're flat pole pieces.
Now,
and Red and I did a blind test. We didn't talk to each other. I sat there and played. I was the guitar player, He's a steel player. And Red's pickups have a true bobbin. Mm-hmm. They're a plastic mold injected bobbin made out of nylon, and when you make the bobbin, like Fender style, most of the single coil pickups, the bobbin is made by taking the magnetic slugs and gluing a top plate and a bottom plate to them, and you glue them and then you wrap around. So it's the pickup, the magnets, and the top plate and the bottom plate. A bobbin that has like sleeves that the pickups slide into. You can't. The wire can't touch the magnet. So Red's pickups were made with these true bobbins, so we could have the pickups, the magnets sticking out of the pickups, put them in the guitar, and in a matter of seconds, we could go from staggered pole pieces to flat pole pieces. And we didn't have to take the guitar apart, put the strings back on, and a half hour later go, oh, does that sound the same, or what's going on? We could hear it immediately. And we both wrote down that when the staggered pole pieces were sticking up, there was a very harsh spike in the mid-range. And
what was supposed to be the advantage of the staggered pole pieces? Was there? Because I don't know how they even figured out how high they should be since they weren't on the guitar.
Here's the deal. As far as I'm concerned, it looked to me like they thought, oh, they need to be staggered because the strings are higher in the middle because of the radius of the neck, and this one seems to be louder. But the reality is what you're doing is you've got a magnetic field here that's put out by all these magnets. Do you think that those little magnets there are going like this? Oh, I'm only going to go right here, and then I'm going to go right here, B string, G string. No, they go.
Well, no, the ones I've seen seem kind of haphazard.
No, there's a magnetic field.
Right.
whether the magnets are flat or up, you have this magnetic field. And so they think, oh, I'm going to raise this up. All they're doing is I think that they're, changing the way the magnetic field is. I like them flat. There's an even magnetic field, and the pickups are very, listen, those are single coil passive pickups.
Yeah, it's quiet.
Nothing.
What's the push-pull?
Here's the bridge pickup.
Okay.
There's the middle pickup. There's there's the neck pickup. Middle pickup. And bridge pickup. It's just a nice even tone change when you change from pickup to pickup. And the pickups are, if you look here, you can see that they're a very, very even distance from the strings. So when these pickups get moved into that, remember that position I was saying where they sound the best?
Mm-hmm.
When you put these pickups in the position where they sound the best and you throw the switch, they're balanced to each other. So there's a magnet that's a couple hundred thousandths of an inch longer in the bridge pickup than there is in the neck pickup, and the magnetic, the Alnico 2 magnets are all different lengths, so they're presenting a different magnetic field under the strings. So you don't have any kind of these are very short magnets in the neck pickup. It's only 4.9K in resistance.
Now, what happens when you go in between? You in between the pickups? Because that's where you tell if they're balanced, right?
No, where you tell if they're balanced is listening to each pickup individually. That's the neck. That's the middle. Now listen in between the two, and you can hear both pickups. Call this out of phase. It's not out of phase. These pickups are in phase when they're in the in-between position. They're in a parallel wiring, but they are not out of phase. People don't say the pickup's in the out of phase position. Out of phase sounds like this. They're out of phase. It sounds like a naily doink. It's the sound of the Grateful Dead. You hear that sound a lot from their guitars, the out of phase. And what out of phase is if you have, like, for example, this is reverse wind, reverse polarity to this pickup and to this pickup. If we did reverse wind to this and did the same polarity, then they're out of phase.
Okay.
But you have reverse wind and reverse polarity. It's hum canceling, but it's not out of phase.
Okay.
And that's why, like on, I think it was Peter Green's Les Paul, he pulled one of the magnets out of the Les Paul, turned it over, and put it back in. Now, that you have changed the polarity of the pickup. And so you've got all this reverse wind and reverse stuff going on, except you've got the same polarity going as the other pickups. So you've gone out of phase. And that's what that humbucker was.
You have a push-pull pot there.
Yeah, that when it's down, I don't use the push-pull anymore. Just I made this guitar so long ago that I still have it in here. The company that made my push-pull pots stopped making them, and the company that I found that was making them made an inferior product. And I had about a 40% failure rate.
What did it do?
Well, when you'd push it, it would pop up, and then you push it again and it would stay up, and you push it again and it would stay up, and it would finally fail and it wouldn't go down. See here, when I push this down, it pops up. When I push it down again, it stays down.
No, but I mean, what does it do to the circuit?
Oh, well, right now we have a standard wiring for a 5-way switch. You know, neck, middle, neck, bridge,
middle, neck.
Yes, and neck. Here, we're with the 5-way switch, we're choosing the bridge pickup, and when I push this, it's a switch that turns the neck pickup on. So now I've got these two pickups
You got the
on.
telly.
I've got like the telly sound.
Yeah, you can hear it. Now, can you get that on your Strats now? Do you have something that works like that?
I put a blender pot in now. There's really only one tone circuit in a Strat. There's one capacitor that bleeds off highs into the capacitor. You have two settings with the two tone pots, but the reality is whichever, if you're using the two pickups that are being controlled by those tone pots, whichever pickup you roll the most highs off of, that's the tone you're going to get out of both of those pickups. So I take this pickup and I turn it into a blender pot. When you turn it all the way up, it gives you the neck pickup. When you turn it all the way off, you're back to a 5-way switch with just a master tone for the whole guitar.
Oh,
so and that's all you need.
I think the standard Strat was the tones were the middle and the neck, right?
But
the treble always was straight.
Yeah, but I have always wired a Strat so that you have control of the tone the tone on the bridge pickup. Yeah, see, even here's the bridge pickup.
There's a lot of overtones that you can hear the overtones. It's really nice. He's using a Silverface Princeton reverb, so it's just a standard little Princeton reverb.
You know, when
you get some great tone out of that.
When I move the switch to choosing the bridge and the middle pickup, and then I turn this on, it has all three pickups.
That's nice. The vibrola is smooth. It's really nice.
That's titanium saddles.
That's the titanium.
And a titanium tremolo block in the back.
And that's ash, right?
Yes. And you notice all the beautiful flame here on the top of this body.
That's flame ash.
Yeah, it's flamed ash. You know, when we built this guitar,
flip it around so they can see this neck. You have to see this neck. This is just regular maple flame.
That's a flame maple neck, yeah.
That is a beautiful guitar.
Oh yeah, you know this body had this flame, and so we painted it, and we do a lot of clear coats before we ever put color on, so we kept going. What color should we paint that? And I go, I don't know. I like the flame. I don't want to cover it up. Let me think for a while. So we hung this guitar facing south every day for over a year. Every day we'd hang it this way, and then we'd turn it this way, and the sun would beat on it. Just the body, you know. And this body is a natural ash body, and that color, that beautiful yellow color, is the color that the lacquer turned from the sun.
That's great.
Yeah, really quite a beautiful.
Now that's
guitar.
nitrocellulose.
Yeah.
So it yellows.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time. So what I want to do real quick, I'll have you play us out. But let's take a look at the other guitars. I want to show all these. These are just
show you the,
beautiful guitars.
Well, I'll show you this is such a beautiful neck on this guitar. You should see this.
This was your main X before.
This was a guitar I played as my main guitar for many years, and it's just such a beautiful neck on this.
That flame maple is just beautiful.
And I made Dylan a couple guitars, and I had 4 boards that were from this tree, and I made him a set of guitars, and then I've still got the other neck sitting at home that I didn't make a Strat yet out of. I was gonna make a Strat to match this.
That neck is to die for.
Oh, it's insane, you know.
And that's ash too, right?
That is swamp ash, yeah. And then, you know, this is really quite beautiful here. Let me turn this. Will this turn? No, that doesn't turn. Let me turn this down.
You got it? Oh, this is a
Telecaster.
Telecaster.
This is a cross between a Strat and a Tele. And so this has got.
Flip it over so we can get the back. Look at this paint job. This is amazing.
It's quite beautiful.
Yes.
And, you know, we've made this guitar in blood red and black. Blood red where the gold is, and black where the black is. We've made about 3 of them black and white. Looks like a formal guitar. Looks like a tuxedo. Black down here with a white pickguard, and then white up here with a black stripe or with a gray stripe. And we've made them, we made one that was like a 56 Chevy Bel Air blue, I called it. You know, I got a picture of a 56 Chevy and I mixed the paint to match it. But these guitars, you know, look at the body contour on the top. You see that, how thin that, it's like
that's
a fin. It's like a fin. And, you know, it has the Strat radius on the back, but it has the Tele radius around the top. And when you put those two together, you end up with this very thin and very deep body contour here. And this guitar has such a quick response. And
that's a beautiful sounding guitar, and that's basically a Tele bridge and neck pickup with a Strat in the middle.
that's right, with our Strat middle pickup, it's Tele and bridge. And then, by the way, this guitar doesn't have it on it, but these 2 guitars do. That's something I need to talk to you about real quick. I'll get this.
Okay, because we're almost out, and then I'm going to have you play. So grab that
Yeah,
guitar.
I'm going to grab this one.
And I'm going to grab
Let
this.
me hand this to you for a second. Could you just put that there? Thank you.
Is that
Yeah.
right?
That's good.
Okay, there's one other thing I want to mention while he's putting that on. They make basses. So this is ash.
That's called our P55, and it's got It's got a beautiful bridge assembly on it that's made out of titanium, and you see that right by your thumb there's a titanium string retainer block. The strings go through there, and then that bridge, the top plate of the bridge, is attached to the block with machine screws that go through the
Right.
and into the block in the back. And then those two pickups are single coil passive pickups made the way my other pickups are made, very quiet. But see, it's got a stacked pot there. That's a tone pot and a blender pot. And the blender blends the second pickup in as a series humbucker.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so it
And
goes
then this
from,
is that the fretboard.
this is Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola.
No, this is a Brazilian rosewood fingerboard.
Brazilian
here, yeah.
rosewood. This
Brazilian
beautiful
rosewood, yeah,
flame maple
beautiful
neck.
flame maple, yeah.
So this is a beautiful
Yeah,
guitar.
that's quite a guitar. Yeah.
Is that
But
straight
this
now?
this
that okay?
It's all right, yeah. This bridge is my new bridge that I'm making, and it's machined out of a billet of tool steel. And I've never heard a telly bridge that's as great as this one. And it's very hard to make. Tool steel is what machinists use to make their knives that they cut other steels with, or it's what drill bits are made out of. So this is 01's tool steel, and it's all machined out of a billet, and it's just the best.
Okay, let me interrupt you real quick because we're out of time. I knew this was going to fly by. www.DeTempleGuitars.com. And besides the guitars, you can buy parts. You can buy the titanium bridges, and you can buy that all of that stuff. The straps are made by El Dorado, and you can get tooled leather straps. So there's a bunch of stuff, and they have the bass, the Telecaster. These are the Spirit series, if I'm correct.
Spirit series, yeah.
And the Sweet Spot pickups are the pickups.
And we also have a little presence on Facebook. You can see a lot of wonderful pictures of our guitars on Facebook, on DeTemple Guitars Facebook.
Okay, so yes, check that
that's
out.
the place to look at the guitars.
Thank you so much for coming on down.
My
I'm going to let
pleasure.
him take us out with this guitar and playing something on this guitar. We'll have you back, and we'll go through we got to talk to you about his guitar playing, because we already heard a little bit about his banjo playing. We haven't even gotten into the good stuff. So thank you so much, Michael, for coming on the show. And I look forward to having you back next year. And I'm going to let him take us out. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you next week.